some of the things important. 3 crucial ingredients for success right now. Anybody hear this one?
Hey, this is Blake Sloan. I've been selling real estate over 14 years. Our team of highly trained professionals, along with our unmatched marketing, has sold thousands of homes here in the Myrtle Beach area, and this is how we do it.
So 3 most important ingredients for success right now. And I think it's super important what we're going into and kind of what's going to happen, right, with these changes coming up in August. But the 3 most crucial ingredients that are really kind of just required for anybody to have any type of success long term. And it determines the level at which you have a success. But I think it's so simple to see. So the first one, right, of this is just what we call the prerequisite. It's how hard you work. So everybody right now claims that they do what? They work hard, right? If you watch everything online and all these internet people and internet marketers, they say, oh, you just work really hard, you grind it off, you'll be successful. But that's not necessarily the case. Right? The key here is that to understand that, hey, to have anything in life or to have any level of success, guess what? The hard work piece is a prerequisite. What does that mean? It's what's required to get there, right? So if I don't have that, right, the bottom line is for anybody to be successful, you have to have hard work. And you just got to understand that that's just the overall prerequisite, meaning that's the cost of admission. So once you get to a certain point, everybody that's successful, guess what? Everybody's working hard. So the level is equal at that point. Now, is the level kind of pretty low sometimes for real estate? Yeah, that's why the average agent sells 4 homes a year. But if you talk about being successful and having success with it, I've got to make sure I have this hard work piece down. Most of us here do, but it just goes to show like, hey, look, this is one of the things that I shared it in a couple of videos recently. He said, hey, look, what's the hardest day you worked? What's the longest day you worked this year? Anybody know what's the longest day you worked? July 4th. All right, how many hours is that? 18 hours. So what's we got? What's the longest days you guys worked this year? Give me a couple. 14. What else? One more. 12. So here's the crazy part. Your level of success has absolutely nothing to do with that day or those days. Why? Your success has direct correlation with the lowest 100 days you did the entire year. So you never want to measure the hardest days you work. You want to measure what are my lowest days I worked the entire year. And your lowest 100 days are automatically exactly determine what your level of success is. And it's so true to talk about that. And so the key part of this is not the foundation, this is the prerequisite, right? So the point is you have to work your ass off to have success at any level and to keep at any level, right? To make sure I keep showing up. And so that's just something that everybody knows, but it's okay to check that box. All right, this is the prerequisite. This is what everybody successful all works hard. Everybody knows successful. Guess what they do? Work hard. They're up early. They're going at 5 o'clock. Look at my coach. He's up at 4 o'clock. I don't know how he does it. He only sleeps like 3-4 hours a night, every night. And he shares it on social too, so you can see it. Going to bed, right? 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, up at 4 a.m. It's just one of those things. At every level, people are playing hard. And so you know this is the prerequisite. I got to make sure I have it. You're never, ever, ever, ever going to be successful at a high level without working hard. Get that part, right? Second piece here. This is the most important. What do you think it is? Skill set. Specifically, come back, talk about this piece, right? Your intentional development of skill set. Intentional development. What's my intentional development of my skill set? What does that mean, you think? There's 2 main ways you learn skills. What are they?
Practice.
Practice? We'll call that personal development, right? That's personal development is really meaning what? What does that mean? No, personal development means I'm learning from somebody else. Either through books, through audio, through podcasts, right? Through a mentor. I'm learning that for somebody else. I'm personally developing the skill set before I need it. The other way to do it, and most people learn, is the way most of you guys are doing real estate. They learn about mistakes. What's the problem with that? It takes too long. It's exhausting. It's a very, very, very long cycle. So for me to learn through mistakes, I have to go through a lot of pain. And in real estate, it's a lot of money because we have to generate leads that you blow, right? And so that's a key part of like you don't want to learn by just mistakes. That's one way you want to make sure that I learn from my mistakes. So if I do not sign somebody, I want to go back and do what? Listen to recording, reevaluate so I can understand where do I need to increase my skill set at. Super important piece here in what I do. Does that make sense? Right? Third piece here is what he said is practice. Practice is like what? Role play. I can read this 100 times in a book, but what happens? I don't use it until I have the practice piece of it, right? Just like in football, right? We watch film, you do stuff, then all of a sudden we go back into football and we run the same play 100 times, over and over and over and over, right? Because it's got to be something that's in my subconscious that naturally happens as a skill set, specifically relating to what here? Sales and business. Understanding copywriting, things like that, understanding my sales. Most of us from here, it's going to be sales and scripts on the phones, objections, things like that. We got to role play it, especially with the thing coming up on the 17th. It's super important for us, right? We got to make sure we're doing that overall. Fourth piece. You got to constantly ask yourself and be honest with yourself, how good are you? Meaning I do what? I take some inventory about how good am I actually at this in terms of objection handling, skill sets, things like that, which is super important that I make sure I'm looking at, right? You have to make sure that you have to get the skill set first. Meaning that a lot of people want to get the outcome first before they get the skill set. They feel like if I show up enough and do enough, I'm going to get the outcome, but the problem is you won't. And what that means is you can show up and put all the hard work in and work your ass off and put the hours in over and over and over for a long period of time, and guess what? You're not going to get the outcome without getting the skill set. It's true in anything. One of the great examples he talks about in the podcast, he talks about baseball, right? You don't get to Major League Baseball by just playing baseball a long time. Guess what? How do you get to Major League Baseball? And that's the outcome. The skill set's developed where? Right? Little League, right? Then high school, then college ball, then minor leagues, and then if you're good enough with the skill set, the minor leagues, then you get the opportunity. But for some reason in business, people want the opportunity first and then get the skill set. It doesn't happen. That could be in leads and things handed to you and deals that come in, right? You have to understand the skill set always becomes before the outcome. And I think that's a great reminder to everybody in business. They think if I just show up long enough, I go through the motions long enough, right? And this is what usually happens. There's two main growths in the business for you guys in here. They learn the script, they practice their butt off, they come here. Then what happens? Stop learning anything else except the buyer presentation or the listing presentation, they stop here. There's no more personal development, which is why they stay flat in terms of what they do. They learn by beating their head against the wall, by having mistakes. You have to make sure I focus intentionality on developing my skill set through personal development. Things like listening to stuff, whatever it is over. And so I want you guys to write this down. Skill first, then the outcome. Or you can put skill first, then the opportunity comes. So skill first, then the opportunity. It's so important to remember that I'm going back and doing. I was thinking about this. I was going to share this later, and this is separate. This is why I'm teaching it today. I was thinking like, man, what do we do or how do we do that people get good? Why are so many people that are really good, some that aren't good, right? Why do people struggle over and over and over and over? And it always comes down to how they interact with people and really ultimately their skill set with the clients. Like why do some people show up and they do the work, they don't get the results? And it all comes down to their skill set. And I was thinking, man, if you just went in, like what could our people do who are struggling right now? If I'm not good at sales, how do I make them good? I'm obsessed with this. And I was thinking this morning, early on, like, dude, if they just listened for 2 hours a day for 2 months, you'd be a totally different human and you would actually not have to worry about anything in sales. Why? Because you talk like him. There's so many things that he talks about over and over and over. I was reviewing some of the stuff, right? He has all the trial closes in there. He has all the things that, remember the stuff like, does the idea make sense to you? Do you like the idea? Right? All that stuff is, who's using that recently? And so it's so important. If I want to get really good, if I'm struggling right now, if I don't feel like I'm as good as sales as I want, just go back and listen for 2 hours a day. I'm telling you. In the car, at night, in the morning, you'll talk like him. It's got every objection you can handle. I mean, he talks about how to loop, right? He talks about how to differentiate. He talks about the 310s. But everything he talks about. Forrest Gump close, that's super valuable. We got to make sure we're doing. But if you're struggling and you put 2 hours a day for 2 months, you'll have a different life. Everything will be different about you. How you talk, how you operate, your sales ability, how people like you, how I handle people on the phones, because you'll mirror him and and the whole system is right there. And so that's the simplest way I can do it, right? Just go back and listen to it. So if you're struggling right now, if you're not feeling like your skill set's where it needs to be, go back and listen to that. Super important. Third piece here, and they're all intertwined where one doesn't work without the other, is time. What do you think that means?
How you manage it?
Nope, not in this scenario. There has to be this thing that talks about a lot called aggressive patience. You might have heard about it before? What does that mean, you think? Just talks about in business in general, it takes time. It's so complex, right? Like if you're in business, if you just survived real estate for 4 or 5 years in the beginning, you just naturally are able to help get the skill set. They can't take it away from you. All of a sudden, it becomes easy. Right? It doesn't become, doesn't mean you're not going to have downs and ups and crazy people and shit. But there's this piece of it that always takes time. And so what that means, you have aggressive patience far beyond the place where you're bored. And that's when the results really start to come. And he talks about giving the example of baking and cake. Everyone wants to rush the process of getting really, really good. Meaning that have a big business, have lots of repeat business, lots of referral business, all that stuff. It takes time to build this in business. And he gives the example of everyone wants to rush that. Just like that Martha Stewart example I was telling you guys about changing the ingredients, everybody wants to rush it. So if I call Martha Stewart up and say, hey, Martha, you've been hanging out with Snoop Dogg. If you tell me about this recipe we got here, I want to bake the world championship cake, right? She gives me the ingredients. You got to put a little bit of this in it, a little bit of this in it, a little bit of that in it, right? This much sugar, all the stuff in the cake. But she says I got to cook it at 400 for 50 minutes, right? If I say, well, you know what? I don't want to wait that long. I want to cook it at 600 degrees for 25 minutes, what's going to happen? It's going to burn out the cake. It's not going to come out right? So there has this piece that time must be a part of it for all of us. We must have aggressive patience, meaning what? We play the long game. Everyone gets so addicted to the short-term gratification.
You can't cheat the system.
You can't cheat the system. You can't hack the system. Sometimes it just takes time and process. Same thing with our clients, right? There's a long sales cycle. I can nudge them and urge them, but I want to have aggressive patience, meaning I don't have apathy, but I have aggressive patience, meaning I what? I speed up as much as possible, but I don't rush it. Does that make sense? Which is super important for me to understand. And the same thing, I don't get tired. I don't get super anxious and try to change the ingredients because I can't get the outcome necessarily quickly. That makes sense? You have to have all three of these overall, which is super important in terms of that. Meaning I must show up with hard work and skill set way past the point of it being boring. If I constantly do that over and over and over and I allow the hard work piece that I constantly have hard work, meaning I'm consistent with it. I'm constantly developing my skill set intentionally, right? Over and over and over for a matter of years, what happens? Finally, I have this place here of massive success and I have the confidence in the things that sometimes just takes time. And here's the crazy part, right? I can have all the hard work and all the skill set, but I don't get enough time. What happens? I don't have the success, right? Or the long-term success that's sustainable. I can have all the skill set and give a lot of time, but if I don't work hard, what happens? I don't get level of success, right? And so I can have all the hard work for a very, very long time. If I don't develop the skill set, what happens? I don't get the results. And so that's why it's such a trifecta of what's important, and that piece comes together, and I want to constantly be measuring myself on this. Like, all right, am I actually working hard, right? Scale of 1 to 10, being honest with myself. Am I going home and just hiding? That happens a lot in this business, right? Come in the morning, do the huddle, do whatever else. I don't feel kind of a little bit after in the afternoon, and people just go home and hide at 3 o'clock, right? That's not going to work long-term based on the success model. It just doesn't work. And so I have to be willing to hold myself accountable on that in terms of what's going on. How hard and how much time a week am I spending developing my skill set? For me, it's hours and hours, right? Mornings, nights, anytime I'm driving, right? All these things you have to be doing consistently. I'm 20 years in, right, almost. I think this full-time real estate only, December will be 20 years, but I was licensed timeshare 2 years before that. So like the reality is, this is important. It's constantly got to be done. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books, right? Constantly doing stuff. But if anybody right now is like, hey, look, I feel like I'm in a little bit of a slump, or I don't feel confident going into this new marketplace, right? We got to be killers starting August 17th. Why? Because it's going to be brutal for the first couple weeks or months. And so it's important that we're really good at selling and that we're getting the outcome we want. And so I challenge everybody to, hey, look, how do I do 1 to 2 hours a day for the next 2 months, or at least 1 month if I have experience. But I was going back through some of it. I'm like, dude, this stuff's so good. And it's so good, I forgot about so many of it. How I use a trial closes, when he uses trial closes, when he loops them, right? When most objections you get are just what? Smoke screens for what? Because they don't trust you, right? Most objections are simply smoke screens because they don't trust you. And so it's important for me to understand, like, all right, how do I go back and sell them back on me? And we could use how many can do the Forrest Gump close right now? 1, right? It's just important to know that that's how much value is in there that we're sitting back not using, right? So that's a key part there. I thought it was just a great reminder. I'll share the podcast link with you because I don't want to take any credit. I didn't come up with this, but I thought it was very valuable for our business. Like I said, our business is probably the most important of this because we tend to rush things. We tend to not work on the skill set enough. If I had to give one summary of our team, what people do is they try to just learn by mistakes only and just beat their head against the wall, which is why you stay in pain for so long, right? You don't outlearn the problem. You just learn on the fly. They want to learn how the football game works inside the football game. You can't do that. You have to practice and practice and practice and practice, role play, listen to audio, because you got to change, right, the way that you think about yourself and your self view, and we got to change your worldview about sales as well.